So now we will have Belén Martínez Carbonell, Secretary General of the European External Action Service. Also joining her will be Radmila Shekerinska, Deputy Secretary General of NATO. And this will be a type of in conversation with, but it'll be very ably moderated by Rosa Balfour, Director of Carnegie Europe here in Brussels. So once you're ready, please do come to the stage. Yeah, the names just need to be, one name needs to be replaced, that's all. So Rosa and colleagues, please do come. I know they're all in the building, so that's not a worry. Here they are, great. Right. Okay, so over to you.
Good morning. And welcome to this session. This conference is called Europe 2040, and we're going to be focusing on security. And this is the only session that is really explicitly focusing on security. And I couldn't be joined by two better speakers for this. Now, I want to go straight to our issues. Today, European security, and this is since 2022, of course, really runs through Ukraine. And Europeans have done quite a lot. I mean, thinking back to 2020, I think it was unthinkable where Europe is today in terms of supporting Ukraine. So I'd like to start by asking Radmila Shekerinska, who's the Deputy Secretary General of NATO, just to give us, where we are in just a few words, where we are in terms of supporting Ukraine and NATO policy in this regard, before turning to Belén Martínez Carbonell, who's the Secretary General of the External Action Service, with the same question. Please.
Well, thank you, Rosa, and good morning, everyone. Just 4 months ago, NATO leaders met in The Hague, and there was a very clear sense of urgency with regards to the situation in Ukraine, but also with regards to our present and future defense challenges. After long discussions before the summit and at the summit, I do believe historic decisions were made. And they practically referred to the three priorities that we have really focused on. The first one was increase of defense spending so that our deterrence and defense can be strong and hold. Second, increase of defense production, because you don't defend with percentages of GDP. You defend yourself with clear and visible and realistic capabilities. And the third one was the support of Ukraine. And the three are very interconnected, and we cannot do without any one of them. So there was a clear sense of urgency and need for unity. It was the unity that our citizens need. It is the unity that our adversaries fear. And the decisions that were made are now the focus of our attention. So I think that especially on supporting Ukraine immediately after the summit, there was a strong focus by the NATO Secretary General on getting essential US equipment, which is in the stockpiles and available, financed by European allies and Canada, delivered to Ukraine with the speed of relevance. And this is actually our focus very much this year. A number of allies have already delivered on their packages, the equipment, especially air defense, ammunition, essential, existential, not actually essential, existential issues are being delivered to Ukraine. And more importantly, we are also planning ahead for the last month and for 2026. The total package for 2026 is planned at 12 billion euros, 12 billion US dollars. Majority of NATO allies have either already contributed or have announced their contributions at the last defense ministerial. And this is very much in the focus because the security of Ukraine is actually our first line of defense. And what happens in Ukraine reflects directly on our deterrence and defense.
Thank you very much. And Belén, the role of the European Union is also unprecedented in contributing to this effort. Can you just give us, in pills again, what has been done? It doesn't need to be turned on.
Okay. I mean, the first thing that I see looking at the three of us is that it looks very female. And I would read it all hands on deck. That's how I would read this. I think this is such an existential issue for Europe that it requires everybody and every project to take into account the security threat that the Russian aggression has put upon us. And that's how I will read this, that how interlink the security of Ukraine is with the security of Europe. And a lot of, I would say, no stone has left unturned in Ron-Punshumand to provide for this. This has been turned into a Europe's moment of independence when it comes also into building our own security. And it's not by coincidence that you see the massive effort to support Ukraine with the massive efforts to scale up Europe of defense. And the defense readiness roadmap goes in that direction, goes in the direction of providing Europe with a strategic autonomy, providing Europe with the capacity to feeling, in particular for those 23 EU member states that are part of NATO, the commitments that they have to do. But some of these no stone unturned examples that I would like to put to you is that we have done things that we wouldn't have thought a few years ago. We have trained more than 82,000 Ukrainian soldiers with European instruments to be ready to be fit for combat in Ukraine. We have completed by 80% our pledge to deliver 2 million rounds of large caliber ammunition. Some of us who've been in institutions for many years, we would have thought this was inconceivable. The European funds will be turned into buying military support. And we have put these massive investments in defense industrial cooperation with Ukraine, including the work that is now going on the Drone Alliance. And for us, as I said, this is a strong Europe means a strong Ukraine and vice versa. And the future of Ukraine in this regard is very much linked to the security guarantees that Europe can provide for Ukraine. And these security guarantees are very much linked to the political project that is Ukraine's membership of Europe. And there we are advancing quite fast on the enlargement agenda. We have a problem with, it's not a secret, one member state blocking the progress in the Council. But the future for Ukraine is closely linked to Europe, and I think that's another part of the agenda. And then the third question is that what we are facing in Ukraine is a test of the wars of the future. We need to fight Russia with different means. They fight us with hybrid wars. We need to fight back with means that we were unconceived also in the future. And a good example, again, is all the work that we are doing with European means and in good partnership with allies on fighting the shadow fleet. Because as you know, one of our targets about fighting Russia is fighting its war economy. And these we fight on different fronts. And the shadow fleet is a good front where to fight them. Because this is the shadow fleet that carries those Russian oil revenues that we want to cut down to cut its war economy. So as I said, it's a war of the future is being tested in Ukraine.
Thank you very much. You've mentioned war of the future and also the prospect for Ukraine's accession to the EU. And of course, last week, the enlargement reports were published. I'd just like both of you to just think a little bit about European agency, because since there's been a change of administration in the United States, the sort of strategic leadership direction really needs to come from Europe. And, you know, the vehicle for that is not just the EU, it's not just NATO, it's also NATO-EU cooperation. So perhaps can I ask you a little bit, and thinking also of these hybrid operations such as the Shadow Fleet and other areas, can I ask you a little bit about NATO-EU cooperation and how that's functioning? Belén, please, you continue.
I think we will be kind of explaining the same thing from different sides of the mirror. But I think through all of this, we have, as I said, set up a lot of tools. But at the end of the day, it's all about development, this European pillar of NATO, and how can Europe, and in particular the 23 member states that are part of NATO, contribute to achieve those NATO targets. NATO and EU are kind of closest partners, and the efforts in Ukraine demonstrate this. First, as I said, the Defense Readiness Roadmap has very concrete targets and objectives that fit those of the alliance. It's the European Drone Defense Initiative, the Eastern Flank Watch, the European Air Shield, the European Space Shield. All these fits into the targets and the objectives that NATO has set for itself. We have big initiatives when it comes to funding that will contribute to meet those NATO targets. The Commission initiative SAFE, Security Action for Europe, with an initiative of 150 billion potential loans for member states that are being discussed as we speak, with action plans being submitted by the end of this month. That is a huge boost to European capacity to defend itself and thus contribute to the NATO targets. And then it's the multiplying effect that all these investments will have in Europe capacity in closing our capability gaps, which are very important, where we don't want to duplicate structures with NATO, but we need to also develop our side of the story. It's on our investment pledges that we're doing, contributing, as I said, to the European pillar of NATO. All this is super important, and I think that we have constant dialogue, technical level and at all levels, to make sure that our projects match each other, also through the good work of the European Defence Agency.
And Radmila, also I'm thinking about the Coalition of the Willing, which has been playing a pivotal role in managing the relationship with the United States and in providing leadership. And of course that includes non-EU members who are NATO members. So how does that work? How can one make sure that this constellation of institutions and leadership actually fosters European agency in this matter?
Well, I would argue that NATO and EU are partners, really exquisite type of partners throughout the years, even in times of peace. But in times when our security is challenged, there is actually no alternative. So we cooperate practically in a number of domains, from, I don't know, maritime security to military mobility. We have teams, we have expertise, we interact on many of these issues, but I think what's more important is that we have a clear decision from the leadership that we really want to cooperate by using the advantages that both organizations bring into this partnership. Without duplication, with a lot of focus on complementarity. I mean, in the course of just this year, we have had the Defense Commissioner, Defense and Space Commissioner several times. We'll have Belén at the beginning of next year. We had other commissioners joining us. Very, very clear view that in times of need, we need to focus on what we do the best. Therefore, in dealing with security, what we bring to the table is very much the military competence, the capabilities discussions, the standards, interoperability, while we do count on the EU not only to support allies and our efforts in terms of financial means, as Belén has mentioned, but also on issues where your expertise is strong. Resilience, military mobility, just to name the few. What I believe is essential in this partnership is that both in the Coalition of the Willing, this is very visible, but especially when developing the defense industrial base, which we consider to be really one of the three priorities, is not to avoid additional barriers. Because actually our European security depends, on Europe being more ambitious, taking the lead, especially in the domain of conventional deterrence, but also not creating obstacles that will avoid allies bringing something to the table. I do believe European security cannot profit if we leave aside the contributions from both security but also industrial production of the US, UK, Turkey, Norway. So our strong position on this is let's try and develop a much stronger transatlantic industry defense base, because what we see on the other side is we see not only Russia turning into a war economy and really focusing on financing this war machine, but also Russia being enabled by cooperation in the military domain with China, Iran, North Korea. There is absolutely no excuse for us not bringing the maximum of cooperation to the table and creating even additional obstacles that will make our production weaker and our potential for the future much, much at stake.
I'd like to turn now to the theme of this conference, which is really, foresight and Europe 2040. I mean, what we're doing now, we've seen very rapid move towards building up European security and defense, but it's being conducted under duress. But still, it's foundational to whatever's going to look like, whatever European security is going to be look like in 2040. So can I ask you, amid the rush and the need to fortify European defences at a time of military threat, what of this is going to be foundational to what European ability to protect its own territory, both in conventional ways and in less conventional ways, in 2040? Or, perhaps to put it more briefly, what is there, or what does a European way to security look like? Radmila, would you like to start?
I wouldn't dare talking on behalf of, just a European view, but let's say, let's talk about how we see it in NATO. There is no, unfortunately, single bullet for solving security challenges. This did not happen in the past. It is not true now for any country, any continent, including ours. But this is why we don't believe in single bullets. But with the risk of sounding boring, we have offered a triad of solutions. And this is, we really need to increase defense spending. And when we talk about increased defense spending, especially in Europe and Canada, someone, I think, said burden sharing is not writing a check and invoicing, your security. That's not a realistic option. The first time I joined NATO defense ministers was when my country was still not part of NATO, but we have joined sessions for Afghanistan because we were contributing to the mission there. And I remember even at sessions discussing Afghanistan, we would have the same repetition of statements. We would have a US Secretary of Defense saying European allies and Canada need to do more, and then many of European ministers and Canada saying yes, but not now. And this is not a reoccurring theme from 2017 when I heard it for the first time. It is a reoccurring theme since the creation of the alliance. So people quote President Eisenhower talking about this. So I do believe that this is the time to actually turn this burden sharing from a problem, let's say, into an opportunity for all. And, building European capabilities, investing in your own security, it is important for the alliance. I do believe it is important for both sides of the Atlantic. Secondly, on defense production, I already mentioned, at the beginning of this year, we struggled even with basic production such as ammunition. If I remember correctly, I think Russia was outperforming us 4 times. That was unacceptable. But I think that especially on the issue of ammunition, it is clear that when there is a political will, when we make up our minds and when we are dedicated to what we have said is our commitment, there are results. So on the issue of ammunition, we have closed the gap in the course of 1 year. So if we're focused, if we are determined, if there is a resolve in us, clearly these are formidable economies and incredible industries that we have. So we now need to do the same when it comes to more sophisticated equipment. When it comes to not only the typical primes and their products, but also when it comes to new technology. So our focus is very much how can we support the industry to outproduce our competitors, but also continue to out-innovate them. And this is why Eastern Century, the new activity that our SACEUR has initiated, is focused on protecting the eastern flank for new challenges, but also very much moving forward on innovation. And this is where we work very well with our Ukrainian partners. And I fully agree with Belén. This is a two-way street. We support them, but actually we learn a lot. And the third part is, if we cannot send the message to Putin that we stand by Ukraine, he will not really believe our words also when it comes to our security. So in a way, we talk a lot about increasing strategic, posing strategic dilemmas to Russia. It's all of these things together. Him seeing that we are producing, that we are investing in our defense, but also seeing that we show unity along the way, and we continue to support Ukraine, either be it through sanctions, decisions on frozen assets, but also very much the announcements and the continued military equipment flowing towards Ukraine through Pearl and other initiatives.
So, Belén, and before we open it up for questions, same question to you, but just, we've talked about strength, we've talked about defense, we've talked about conventional deterrence, we've talked about innovation, hybrid, eastern flank. What else would you add to, the building blocks of what is being done now that are going to, transform Europe and, looking forward to 2040, what can we imagine Europe to look like in terms of security and defense? 2040, 15 years from now.
2040 is a very long time, in particular the speed of the world these days. But so it's very arrogant to try to anticipate, but I'll make a little effort. I think that what we will see is that we've heard the call of the allies, and Radmila was saying now is the moment. And I couldn't agree more with Radmila that we have to turn this into an opportunity. Investment in security and defense, because we need to be more autonomous, can also be an opportunity for Europe to grow economically, because this is an area where a lot of funding will be invested, and there are opportunities for European industries, for European companies to invest, ideally in sync with Ukraine, because it's a double win. And I think these will open a lot of the innovation, and we see that the majority of the technologies are dual-use technologies. And if the wars of the future are going to be fought with drones, AI, and things that I can't imagine what is going to be there in 2040, I think none of us can. I think we won't win the war on quantity elements vis-a-vis the Chinese or the Russians or the Americans, because they're very good at production, at bulk, and numbers. But what I do think we can have an edge, competitive edge, is on technology and innovation. So that's my first point. And these will help us also to grow, because we need economic growth with a view to stand by ourselves. Secondly, the economic security, which very intrinsically linked to defense and security. We also need to have those means to fight those hybrid wars. And that means, the Commission is preparing this Resource Europe and, boosting European economic security, European economic autonomy, because a lot of what we'll see in trade wars, in critical raw materials, fight for the critical raw materials, all these will have a huge impact also on our capacity to defend ourselves, because we'll need those critical raw materials to be able to build our defense industry. So everything is really interlinked. And then, so that will be the second axe where I think we will be hopefully better and smarter. And the third is that, notwithstanding, the world getting more aggressive and people there to fight for themselves, I think there's still value on partnerships. And I hope that will be still the European way to look at the world. We have sped up the number of security and defense partnerships that we do with different countries. The discussions we are having on SAFE with UK and Canada are a sign that we look at close partners, and we see the need to engage with them. And of course, first and foremost will be those in our neighborhood, and there again, accession will make Europe stronger, because there will be more countries being part of Europe. But then we look at our second layer of neighborhood, and everything that happens in the northern Mediterranean region, the Middle East, broader Middle East, will have an impact of that. Whatever happening in India, which is really a rising power, and that's what we've making such an effort to have closer relationships with India. There are all these emerging powers with whom we share many parts of the agenda. It's not going to be, you know, I tied up a knot with Europe, I buy you full. It's going to be more interested relations on sectoral issues. But I think we, again, need to look at the world that is getting more aggressive, and we need to see with each partner where our interests coincide and do partnerships with them. And again, there, I think Europe has a good record of engaging with the rest of the world. But we soon will be the only ones standing there looking for allies. So let's make, again, an opportunity out of the current geopolitical context.
Thank you very much. So economic growth, economic security and global partnerships. And that's this sort of summary of the European way. Let me open it up to questions and comments from the audience. I'm going to bunch them. So I have one gentleman here. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. And I'm also going to ask, while I do this, I'm going to ask the organisers to let me know how much time do we have left, because we started a little bit late. So, sorry? 15 minutes, great. So we actually have time for some good questions. So let me ask this gentleman to start, and I'm scanning the room for more hands up, please.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much to both speakers. I am Patrick Chevalreau, Open Diplomacy Institute, Paris. I have myself worked a lot of time within the NATO common structure, and I am very worried about the security of Europe now. NATO has a military leg, which is very credible with the NATO common structure, exercises, defense plans, interoperability, standards. It has also a political leg. I'm sorry to be blunt, but with the Trump's administration, being at the minimum in an ambiguity and to be very pessimistic, lining up with Moscow since months now, where is the political leg of NATO now?
Thank you very much. Now, there were two hands here. Okay, the lady first and then the gentleman.
Thank you. My name is Pascal Juncker from the Ministry of the Economy in Luxembourg. I would like to ask the speakers questions about energy and resources for this defense. So Europe is an energy poor and a resources poor continent. More energy will go in AI. Where in the future are we taking that extra energy and those extra resources from to build up that defense and turn that budget into material? Turning that budget into material, my second question would be, can we not in that defense budget also have a defense by adapting the European continent to climate change, which is another threat? And if we don't have that, then what are we fighting wars for?
Thank you very much. And please, yeah.
Yes, I'm Bert Wilde from the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I don't know whether you're familiar with the Czech documentary "Change My Mind," in which focuses on people that have totally different beliefs. Whether it goes about whether we're talking about the truth in Ukraine, and I'm wondering how are we going to address this and this post-truth society is winning in elections. How are we going to address this in the period up to 2040? And is this not also something for NATO or the EU to address, apart from having all military industrial capabilities in order? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have two political questions and one related to energy. Who would like to? Radmila, please go ahead.
Let me go in the same order that the questions were asked. We do get a lot of questions about the US commitment. And we have had Secretary General really focused, as is the role of every Secretary General, on making the transatlantic link and relationship the best we have and the best we can, because we do believe that this is the strength of the alliance. The fact that we bring forward the European capabilities, European commitment, but also US and Canada's commitment. And there was, in all of his interactions, and he has had quite a few, there was a very clear line. The US is committed to NATO, but the commitment comes paired with an expectation. And this expectation is Europe and Canada stepping up. And I spoke about this before, so I will not go into the details. But let me tell you, there was a very clear signal along those lines at the ministerial meetings, a very clear signal in The Hague. I know that many people were expecting a different outcome. The Hague summit was historic because we have shown to our adversaries that they cannot sow divisions among us. And it is clear in all our interactions with the Congress. We have an overwhelming support in US Congress for the alliance. And we see it in all opinion polls, apropos the questions of winning the minds and the hearts, in asking the American people of their views towards NATO. So the question that you have asked is a question that media analyzed. We have addressed this issue. But the question is, how can we invest even more in a transatlantic relationship that works? And we believe that the 3 decisions in The Hague are the answer in this. Supporting Ukraine, we are doing it with EU money and the US available equipment. This is also one of the recipes, by investing in defense production and by investing in our own security. So I think it is a fair expectation from their side as well. When it comes to the other 2 questions, I mean, my political background would love to have a separate discussion on changing minds, and I agree, it's a formidable dilemma that we face. Both issues are issues on which we have views, we have discussions, but we do believe that EU has more expertise. And we try to focus on the tracks where we are stronger. You know, military capabilities, investing in command and control, enablers, things like this. But we do analyze energy issues because they are the enabling factor that connects the dots. We will need energy to support increased defense production. We will need energy to support our commands, our military exercises. On all of these issues, being dependent in the energy domain has turned into a security challenge. We have been dependent on Russian energy for too long. We have seen naivete a bit on the issue of energy dependency. Europe has moved dramatically in that respect. I will not go into, but we also have to be aware that we should not create new energy dependencies, especially because of the attempts to do more on the climate front, but knowing that the majority of this equipment is produced in China. So shifting from one dependency to the other is not the smart thing to do when it comes to our security. And let me mention this as a connection between these 2 questions. These also are related to issues of resilience. How do we approach divisions in our society which can be amplified which are being amplified, let's face it, by our adversaries? How do we fight them? And this is why the 5% pledge was not part of just the big negotiations. We have calculated at the end of last year that we need at least 3.5% of GDP focused entirely on military capabilities relating to our defense plans. But we also said there is more to security than just the military capabilities. And this is why we added the extra 1.5% that can go into resilience, military mobility, supporting defense production, all these enabling elements. So on these issues, we really trust allies to, in a way, pick the areas where they can do more and focus on them. So although I would love to have the discussion on how to influence minds in the right and responsible manner, but unfortunately, we neither have the time nor the mandate for this.
But Belén, maybe at the External Action Service, things have been accomplished on this front.
not sure anything has been accomplished because the order of the challenge, it will take a while before we say mission completed. But maybe three elements to complement what Radmila said. To Patrick on the relation with the US. I think it's a difficult relation that we will need to manage. But I think 5 months or 6 months ago, nobody would have thought that we would be where we are today. I think our leadership has managed to manage that relation relatively well, both in terms of the trade negotiations, where I think our negotiators have proven to be the best in the world. All things relative, because of course it's the context in which they're negotiating. Also because if we remember Alaska, no one would have betted that today the US would be imposing those huge sanctions on Russian oil companies. So things are turning, maybe not is what we would have wished to ask for the US, but things are in a better place that some people would have feared a few months ago. To Pascal on energy, and you mentioned also climate change. I think with that you give us the answer. I think Europe's answer to that comes on 3 levels. First, our energy dependencies and diversifying, and this is the first lesson we draw from the Russian aggression, diversifying our energy sources, and I think we've done quite a good effort there. Also cutting dependencies from other actors, not just on Russia, but the word there is diversifying. Secondly, is clean energy, and that opens a broad scope of energies that you could use. But I think there Europe has a positive edge where we have advanced a lot on cutting our dependencies from fossil fuels, and that will make us stronger. And then third, partnerships, and here I go back to the critical raw materials and the number of partnerships that we're establishing with third countries to make sure that we can also have our different sources of critical raw materials, diversifying and extracting them in a way that it's smarter and more constructive than some other big players. And then to Bart, I haven't watched the documentary. It's interesting. I'll try to have a look. But again, here I would see different elements to how to address that, in the knowledge that this is probably one of the most challenging issues. First, we have again been learning since 2014 how to fight disinformation and foreign interference and manipulation of information. It's a tall order. And it's a very difficult battle that goes there behind the scenes in the social media. But I think we are working on it, and we are making good progress, and particularly learning from others. Second, the Commission just put out these Democracy Shield proposals on the table, and you will find a lot of ideas there on how to improve society's resilience on different fronts. And thirdly, I think it's by making sure that our leaders deliver to societies on all fronts, and in particular on economic growth. And, our leaders are accountable compared to other leaders out there in other countries. And they need to prove to voters that they listen to their needs and they respond to their priorities. And the majority of the priorities of our voters are economic priorities. So the fact that leaders had a discussion at the last European Council on housing, it's a sign that leaders are listening to people, and that's how best you can defend European democracy, is a democracy that delivers to the citizens.
Thank you very much. Do we have time for another couple of questions, or not really? Okay, so please join me in thanking our speakers for this session.